So
Yes.
genes are so incredibly important. They are predetermining, our fundamental blueprint that allows us to develop the bones that we have. And you do develop the most bone that you're ever going to have round about the end of the second decade. So you're a young adult. You can gain a little bit more, but from there, really, that's your skeleton is fully formed, and that's what you're working with. So vitally important to get proper nutrition that's good for bone as you're growing, and the primary mineral in the skeleton is calcium, but also vitamin D is vitally important to be able to absorb that from the gut. And then there are, micronutrients and so on. Most of those things can be got from the diet. As well, you need some stimulus to make the bones know that they need to be strong. And that, of course, is exercise, because that's how we load our bones mechanically. So the more active you are when you're a kid with weight-bearing, impact kind of loads, higher forces are better than lower, with lots and lots of variety of movement. So that's how you build the biggest skeleton bank. And then throughout life, you have to maintain that sort of behavior, the same good diet and same as much exercise as you can, and avoid a number of things that will undermine that bone bank. And these are things like alcohol and caffeine are not great. A little bit is okay, but too much is not great for your bones. Certain medicines, like steroids,
Yes.
really bad for bone. So if you, but they're also really important for certain conditions. So if you have to be on them, just be aware that they are bad for bone, and you might want to get off them as soon as you can, titrate your dose down as quickly as you can, obviously in discussions with your doctor. So just being aware of those kinds of things is really important.
It is really important. I remember even as a dietitian, studying, and the thing that I've often reflected on is that the years from 20 to 30 is so important, but it also coincides with a time when women especially are dieting and restricting food intake. And I've often wondered how much damage that does, to the development of bone. Are you aware of any research about that?
Well, certainly there's evidence if there are extremes of energy restriction, it's terrible for bone. It's akin to going through menopause, because what happens is that's actually what you're doing in these extreme conditions where you're very much restricting energy intake versus what you're using up daily. You're kind of in drought conditions. You put yourself into a situation where your circulating estrogen drops, and that is really deleterious for bone, because estrogen is highly protective of bone. If you take it away, the bone resorbing cells are not clamped anymore. So, at any time in your life, an energy deficit is not great for bone, but especially during development, it's bad, because once you have missed that window of opportunity to develop to your full genetic potential, you don't get that back. So we see a lot of people who perhaps have had anorexia when they were younger, but have been extremely careful with their diet, are the correct weight now, have done a lot of exercise throughout their life, and they come in age quite young, maybe early 50s, and they say, I'm devastated, I've got osteoporosis. And when we find out about the history, we actually see that it was stemming from that period of their life.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note too, though, that at any stage in your life, if you undergo considerable weight loss, you're not only losing fat, but you will also lose muscle and bone. Now, the fat is very easy to regain, the
Yes.
muscle and bone is not. So if you are dieting, really important to add exercise into that mix, because that will help to maintain the bone and muscle.
Yes, and this is what I've talked a lot about on, this podcast and in other forums, that talking about body weight is really not that helpful, because we need to be talking about not just fat, but muscle and bone. And it's something, I was sort of thinking when you were talking about the skeleton earlier on, it's so important. It's our foundation. But because it's kind of hidden away, we don't think about it as much as we might our skin, or, whether we've put on a little bit of weight around the middle, or whether we've got more muscles in our arms. We see those things, but we don't actually see our bones. But as they say with a house, if the foundations are not strong, then the house is going to be weaker as well. So I think that's all really interesting, and I like the idea that we have to invest in our bones. But of course, once we do get to our 50s, that opportunity, obviously through nutrition, has passed. But there is good news, isn't there, in terms of women and men who find out that they have osteopenia, the thinning of the bones, or the osteoporosis. We can, make a difference through exercise, can't we?